Howdy peeps, welcome back to the channel. Now today is another how I do. It's, as I always stress, it's not the way to do it or the only way to do it, but it's my way of doing it. And that is cleaning out an airbrush, a windy wand if you will. Now, how to put it, because I don't want to sound like I'm having a go at anyone, because I'm not. But there are always posts on whichever Facebook group or forum, wherever you look, my airbrush isn't working properly, paint's bubbling into the cup, there's paint here, what's gone wrong? And probably 95% of the time it's a cleaning issue. There's some muck in there somewhere, and that's probably not down to any fault of the person doing it. These things happen. We all get mucky airbrushes from time to time, but I'm going to show you how I strip mine down, clean it out, and I keep my airbrush relatively clean. It's not spick and span and pristine. You can see, I mean, there's paint on the outside the paint cup and all sorts. But no, I do strip it down and clean it out fairly regularly. So what do we need to start off with? Well, it depends on your paints and how aggressive you want to go with your solvent. For this kind of clean down, where I'm stripping the thing apart and just want to get every last bit of gunk out, you can't go wrong with a bit of just off the shelf hardware store. Doesn't have to be anything. There's cellulose or lacquer thinners. It is nasty stuff, so gloves are probably a good idea, although not vinyl ones because they'll melt. Ventilations, because this stuff even gives me a bit of a ooh. You can feel it in the back of my throat after a while. But you know, for the purposes of this video, I will forego that. And plus, it's damn blimmin' cold in here, so I don't really want to be opening the window. So where do we start? First things first, let's get the air hose off. Now, I don't use a quick connect, and I should have done this beforehand, so we'll do that one back up, leave the air hose on, just so the compressor doesn't empty itself everywhere. And don't do this at home, peeps. Just loosen that off slightly so I can actually take the airbrush off. If I used a quick release, this would be easier, but I don't. So we can just have a quick look. Air valve isn't sticking, plenty of air coming through, and it looks clean, so we don't have to worry about that. And now it's on the floor. So start off stripping down. We'll take the tail off, just unscrew, and I'll get rid of the nice shiny cutting mat and go to the manky nasty dirty one, because this is going to be a manky nasty dirty job. Now we can take the nose cap and the nozzle cap off, and we'll undo the needle nut, and that doesn't want to come out the back very easily. Yeah, that's rather tight. So if you go to pull the needle back and you feel resistance, I'm not too worried at the moment because I know the seals in this are on the way out. If the needle doesn't slide out the back, push it out the front. That way you won't damage the seals. So little nut wrench or nozzle wrench. These don't have to be very tight. As you might notice, if you can actually see, I'm not actually running an O-ring on my needle nozzle. Personal thing, they tend to disintegrate fairly rapidly, and long as you do it up and keep it clean, it's not a problem. Now we pop the needle out through the front, again being careful not to bend it. And it's not too bad, but it would normally be around about somewhere there. You can get a build up of paint which is around the front of the seals, and if you try and pull that back through the seals, that's when you can damage them. Now I know the inside of the back end of this is clean-ish because I did it a short while ago, but I'll show you. I'll take it off. We've got the needle chuck nut, spring guide, trigger guide, all those good bits. As you can see, that's all clean, so we just pop that back together just so we don't lose any little bits. Might give that a quick wipe over and clean. Pop the trigger out. That could do with a bit of a clean. And have a look inside. Yeah, I'm going to leave that. Most of the problems will be in the nozzle or down here in the front end of the brush, which you'd expect because that's where the paint goes. So with my needle nozzle in there, I've got a bit of primer thumb at the moment because I have been using the airbrush, so that's why I noticed it needed a clean out, because it's starting to struggle to spray a little. You can hear these things, they just make a slightly different noise, or you find yourself pulling further back on the trigger for the same kind of amount of paint flow. So we'll just get my little pipette. I actually have a new one. The last one split on me. And I know this isn't the cleanest or clearest of cellulose thinners anymore, but hey ho. I'll give it 3/4. I'll do just empty out the pipettes. I think it's pretty much safe, but you know, these things do melt occasionally. Oh, getting the lid back on this bottle has always been a pig. Come on you get, there we go. Right, and pop that out of the way. Now, various tools we're going to use. There's nothing spectacular. Cotton wool buds for cleaning the majority of the gunk off, outside and the larger surfaces. A paintbrush for deep down inside the colour cup where we can't actually get to with a cotton wool bud, and then some incidental brushes just for the smaller channels and the nozzle, etc. Now I use a combination of these ones, which are from Sainsbury's, and these Wisdom ones which I got from Poundland. These have got slightly longer brush section on them, so they go a bit further in, and this slightly smaller in diameter as well. Now no doubt most of you will have a set of these pipe cleaner type brushes, and they're okay. I mean, the wire will scratch the inside of your airbrush if you're not careful, but if you put cellulose thinner anywhere near them, they melt. So, and I'll show you that later. Once I've cleaned it up, we'll see what happens. So let's grab a few cotton wool buds and get started. First thing first, quick dip and clean off the needle. And I say you can see how much crud is coming off of this needle, and you can see what colours I've been spraying as well. Mainly green and black. Why is that not a surprise? And while we're at it, we can also have a quick check to see whether the needle tip is okay. And looks straight to me. So we'll put that to one side and keep it safe. It's the one bit, or one of the two bits that we can damage and need replacing. Second easiest bit to get the gunge out of, inside of the nozzle cap. And just dip the cotton wool bud in, spin it around, and reverse it and do the same thing. Get any build up out of the threads, which can happen. There we are, that's that clean. The actual needle cap is usually not too bad, it doesn't need much, just a quick wipe around the inside usually, although there is a bit in there today. So what will we use for that, as it's up in the corners? Let's use one of these. And every little bit of gunk you can get out will just help your airbrush run that bit smoother, that bit cleaner for longer. It's scary how small a piece of paint it is that can stop a airbrush from working. Now we've loosened all that up, so we should be able to get it off. There we go. From clean to that, that's just inside the that cap. Oh, bashing into the camera again. Give the trigger spring and guide a quick wipe down, just to get any gunk off. Again, just keeping the action smooth in the airbrush. That'll do. And then the trigger. So, if your seals are in really good condition, you shouldn't get any paint back as far as the trigger, but as I said, I know my seals are on the way out, so I'm going to give it a quick clean just to get the worst of any gunk off of it. Any build up underneath, and for once I'm actually going to clean the gunk out of the grooves in the trigger top. That's not paint or anything, that's just grease and skin off your finger. So that's the major parts done. Well, those parts. This bit doesn't need cleaning. It's just aesthetics if you want to clean it. So now we start working around the inside of the colour cup, just getting rid of any build up or gunk or anything that happens to accumulate. As you can see, quite a bit. And we haven't even got down to the dirty part of it yet. Now, so I've already put one cotton wool bud in the bin, and there always seems to be a build up of some kind of gunk on the rim where we pour stuff in. So I'll pop that one down there. Let's grab another. Start just getting worse of the crud off the outside. Again, a bit of spilt paint, mainly just fingerprints and grease. There always seems to be some clear varnish on here as well. It's not, I think it's aqua gloss. It's either going to be aqua gloss or X22. It's certainly not going to be future or clear. If you scrubbed future or clear, same thing I know, but if you tried to scrub that with cellulose thinner, it would melt in a heartbeat. Aqua gloss, different kettle of fish. There we go. Right, that'll do. So now we're into the mucky bits. So I'll give the inside of the colour cup a quick once around with the cotton wool bud, just to get rid of as much as we can as quickly as possible. And we'll use another one as well, just to make sure we got as much as we can. I'll grab the pipette back and we'll pop a bit of the thinner into the colour cup. And grab an oldish brush, one you don't mind if it doesn't end up being in the greatest condition afterwards. Oh, he says trying to find one. That one will do. He says dropping it, reaching around the camera, try not to smash everything out of the way. Or try not to spill lacquer thinner everywhere, cellulose thinner, sorry. Don't brush. There's a paintbrush you can get right into the corners that you couldn't get to with the cotton wool bud. Actually down into the paint channel as well. And here's where we notice the colour as it comes out rather black. Still an annoying chunk down there, we'll have to get that. So we switch to one of these. It's a little stiffer because of the wire down the middle of it. That's definitely built up in there. It doesn't want to come out. See if we can persuade it, give it a little bit of a nudge. There we go, there's a big old chunk of paint. Right, so that's the inside of the colour cup. And we'll just again make sure we got everything out. The other good thing with the cotton wool bud is they take it with them. When you clean gunk out, it comes out. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that chunk was because it's just gone all nasty and horrible. Right, there's still some gunk in there. So I mean, I don't keep it spotless all the time, but it's not. It's far from being dirty and manky. But it does just tend to build up over time. It's been a month or so since I last done this, so it's about time. That's why I left doing this video until I knew it needed a good clean out, so there actually would be some gunk in there to get rid of. Right. That's better. And now we switch to one of the incidental brushes. There we go, in the front. Spin it around. In this case it's actually screwing itself in, but hey ho. And just keep her going until she comes out clean. Which this time there's not an awful lot in there, thankfully. Yee. That's why it's just come back into the colour cup. And because of the longer handle and the longer bristles on these incidental brushes, you can actually get into the colour cup or get into the paint canal channel from this direction as well. And that's actually not looking too bad. So again, cotton wool by just to pick up all the gunk that came out. Of which there was no small amount. But that's that done. Give the exterior a quick wipe. Make sure there's nothing too nasty building up around there. And just to make sure, quick wipe round with the incidental brush. That looks better. There we go. So, body of the airbrush clean. Now comes the tricky part. Checking out the time as well to make sure I'm not looking at an hour or something. The nozzle. Now, these do need to be cleaned out because this is where the blockages tend to occur. But they are very small, very fiddly. It depends on the airbrush. Some airbrushes have chunkier nozzles, but especially on the Iwata's, they're rather small and fiddly. So again, we just, with the incidental brush, just degunk the inside of it. Now what ideally we would want next is the dental paper points. I however have run out and forgot to reorder some from Amazon, so what I shall use is a pin. Now I'm not recommending this at all. I know this is a very cheap and nasty soft metal needle actually, and I've got a slight bend on it so that the tip of the needle doesn't scratch or dig into the interior. And you can see the gunk that's coming out of the inside that nozzle. But yeah, so I wouldn't recommend using a needle. It's it's just something I do, but I say the dental paper points are far superior. They won't damage the needle nozzle at all because they're paper. You do run the risk obviously using a needle of scratching or stretching out, but I'm being careful not to run it too far through. I think we're getting somewhere now. It's coming out clean, which you probably can't see, but I can. So I shall just have a quick look through the needle nozzle to ensure it does look clean on the inside. Yep, I can see daylight all the way through it. So I'll put that back in my little bit of sponge. So, nozzle clean. First things to do, put the nozzle back in the airbrush. That way you don't lose it. Now again, being gentle, put it in, give it a slight turn the wrong way just to ensure that the threads are lined up so you don't cross thread it. Run it in, just finger tight there. And just a little tiniest tweak with the spanner just to make sure there's no air leaks. Now the next thing is putting together the rest of the front end, and for that I have a little pot. I'll just pop that out of shot for the moment, which is literally it's just beeswax. And we grab an applicator, in this case a cocktail stick, and we just tickle a tiny, well, a very small amount onto the threads. Work a bit in. And what this does is it helps it seal a little better as well, but it also just stops things seizing up. If you do get paint in there, the beeswax covering the threads means that the paint won't stick to the threads, and we've all been there with pots of Tamiya paint where you have to get a pair of vice grips or something out to actually get the lid off because it's welded itself shut. Do that up tight. Put that back on. Ooh. Do that up so it doesn't dry out and get it out of the way. Next is trigger back in. Yep. Trigger and spring guide going in next. I just tighten these up right the way. Well, not tight, but you know, done up. Loosen off the chuck nut. Carefully slide the needle back in, making sure we don't ding the tip. Oh yuck, there's some gunk coming out of there. Oh, right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strip the front end back. And I'm going to show you what's coming out with the needle. Mainly because I don't want it in the nozzle. Right. So pop the nozzle there for safekeeping. See, even though it's just been cleaned, that shows my seals are on the way out. How much gunk and mire is all over that needle. So again, we'll just clean it off. This is from the having the cellulose lacquer thinner in the colour cup. What it's done is it's run backwards up the airbrush and softened and loosened whatever paint was built up behind the seals, and there appears to be quite a bit of it. There we go. So what we're going to do this time is run it through backwards just to save any damage to the tip. As you can see, second time through it's come out relatively clean. Ugh, that was mank. Ugh, let's grab another one. And we're up to the 30-minute mark nearly. So As I say, it's one of these things, it's simple enough to do, and just once every so often, depending on how much you use your airbrush, how many models you build. If you only build 1 or 2 models a year, you might only need to do this once a year. If you build 3 or 4 a month, you might need to do it every couple of weeks or so. And a lot of it is also down to the paints you use. If you use lacquers, then just a quick flush through with lacquer thinner will get it all out. So, needle back down safe. Actually, let's give it another check just to make double sure that there's nothing else coming through. Yep, needle's clean. Right. Well, so nozzle back on. He says, trying to get it straight. There we go. Oh, cut my fingernails. Can't pick things up. Just the slightest of tweaks on that. End cap back on. Now before I pop the needle back in, actually, I will just add a couple of drops of lube to it, just to keep things running smoothly. And we'll start a little further up. Try and, there we go, that'll do. Doesn't take much, but I just use the Badger Red Gab, or Reg Dab, which is just Badger spelt backwards. Find the Iwata lube tends to gunk up and turn to a sort of jelly type substance inside the airbrush, which over time builds up and causes issues, whereas the Badger doesn't. Well, doesn't seem to anyway. So we'll just check the action. Yep, that's working nice and smoothly. Pop the back end back on. Oh dear, find the airline without smashing the camera out of the way or everything else. Screw the airline back onto the airbrush. Making sure that's done up tight. And then pop a little bit of, in this case I'm just going to spray a few drops of just standard Ultimate airbrush thinner through it, or whichever is your thinner of choice, just to see how it sprays. And I also leave a little bit left in the bottom of the colour cup. And by flushing it through like that, we make sure there's no cellulose lacquer thinner in there. Oh, let me just turn that off. There we go. So there's no thinner, or there's no powerful thinner in there that's going to do any long-term damage to any seals or anything like that. So that's how I strip and clean my airbrush. It was actually fairly clean to start with, but you can see if I zoom you in, you can see the amount of gum